Hey, this is Eddy ErDogan, the Armenian Assassin, feeling blessed as I'm listening to the Rowdy Wrestling Podcast.
There's a rowdy crowd today.
Hey now, everybody, welcome to the Rowdy Wrestling Podcast. Here on rowdywrestling.net, tonystabile.com, iTunes, TuneIn, Podcast, Pod Addict, Pod something or other. Any place. The ubiquity of this podcast has pretty much infiltrated the internet. I'm Sterling Tony T.S. Stabile, man of many names, podcaster, wrestling fan, but most of all, human being. How's everybody doing, man? Fall is kicking in, and I know I bitch and I moan about it, you know, the lack of sundresses and bikinis and overall good weather in place for long pants, boots, and jackets. Not a big fan of that, but I'm enjoying it this year. I don't know. I'm feeling it a lot more. I guess it's the place I'm in now it's I don't know, the temperature's a lot more comfortable than my old pad, so I'm finally enjoying it. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I promise all of you. And yeah, just a good time. Wrestling is WWE. If we want to talk about that, is in one of those really weird spots. As next week we have WWE Elimination Chamber, 3 chamber matches. Now I've had that complaint about TNA back in the day when they were doing their Lethal Lockdown pay-per-views, where every single match, for no goddamn reason, was taking place in either the steel cage or the 6 sides of steel, because they got to brand everything, much like WWE. It makes no sense to me. But then when you look at the buy rates, those were always, you know, those are shows that generally draw a bigger crowd, which, okay, if that's, you know, at a superficial level amongst casual fans, if that works, I'm all for it. However, I'm looking at this, and if you're marketing this towards your hardcore fan, the people who unfortunately will stick with them no matter what, having the women come out on Monday Night Raw a few weeks ago and say, you know what, we had a really great match, and we're going to have another one, this time to make history in a Hell in a Cell. You know? Why? When the first Hell in a Cell happened, it's because the story, the emotions were running high. It needed to go to a new place. It needed to go to an extreme place. The same thing with Triple H versus Chris Jericho, where they were the very first match where in the Cell back in 2002, if I remember correctly, where they didn't have that gigantic high spot of coming off the cage, and they told a more cerebral story. Ha ha ha, pun not intended for Triple H being in the match. And, you know, so on and so forth. And then ever since they started doing the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, now you're just having the match to have the match, much like the TLC and all these things. And it downplays the effect of having a Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania between Shane McMahon and The Undertaker. You know? You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where I'm like, we're heading into fall. I'm normally a little more bitchy because of the weather, as you can see. And then, you know, we have these sorts of circumstances where it's a double-bladed sword, I believe that's the expression, where, you know, having a pay-per-view that's built around a big-ass steel cage with a roof on it, and that you're going to have more than one match in there, and you can advertise that on NBC and all over the internet, and you get the casual viewers, you get the people who don't normally buy pay-per-views or don't normally tune into WWE to check it out. So I'm a fan of getting more eyes on the product. It's just the fans that are there week in, week out, it's a very, very piss poor reason to do a thing. So I'm going to leave my complaining at that, because I should be very happy. Eddy ErDogan, the Armenian Assassin, is on the podcast this week. A good friend of mine, a good friend of yours, and a good man in general decided to drop by my studio apartment, if I can steal that gimmick off somebody, drinking some Pabst, playing with my dog, and talking about life in pro wrestling. A great listen, a great time. So happy to have him on the show. And you know what he's happy about? You know what I'm happy about? Heels and Faces. Heelsandfaces.com is your number one stop shop place to go for pro wrestling inspired garments. Their t-shirts, their hoodies, even their accessories, like their stickers and their duffel bag. Just top quality, awesome inspired pro wrestling. They have collaborators like myself where you can pick up the Rowdy Wrestling Podcast t-shirt. Do it now. Do it now. Or you can pick up t-shirts that are inspired by your favorite pro wrestlers like Shane Hawk, like Paul London, Freddie Mercurio, Casey Spinelli, Brad Alexis. I mean, it's just all over the place. Go ahead, check them out. They're gorgeous shirts, top quality, and lots of fun. Heelsandfaces.com, or if you want to check them out on social media, it's all over the place at Heels and Faces. Not going to take too much more of your time, everybody. We got to hop into it as we had a fun, lengthy discussion, Eddie and myself. Before we do it, we do got to pay some bills, so stick around.
What's up, everybody? My name is Chris Aros, invading this show to plug my stuff, and that is www.prowrestlingtees.com/Chris Aros, and buy your loved ones the greatest gift of them all, and that's a Chris Aros t-shirt. Do it now.
All right, everybody. The Armenian Assassin Eddy ErDogan finally on the podcast. How's it going, brother?
Going good, Tony, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a while we're trying to get onto this.
Fuck yeah, man. A couple of misconnections.
Yeah, so I just heard you say the first F-bomb, so I guess it's okay to swear on this?
Oh, dude. Fuck, shit, hell, damn, bitch.
I was about to fucking ask you before we fucking went live, so okay, that's cool.
That's what the beauty of the internet and sponsors that are really nice.
And Pabst. Pabst brings swear words out of you, which is what we're doing right now.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
I think it came across.
So first advertisement is Pabst.
Pabst.
Yeah.
But they're the free ones. They haven't given me anything yet.
Yeah.
Pabst took us up.
Yeah.
You know,
Mark and I will try to convince them to do something.
Blue Ribbon All-Stars.
Of course.
All right. So let's really talk about you, man.
Let's do it.
Take me back. Were you born on a Friday on the stroke of midnight?
I think it was a Sunday. It was a July 22nd, late summer night. I don't know where I'm going with that. But it wasn't the summer. It was July 22nd.
I was about to say, what was the middle of winter in July? one weird year. All right, but no, seriously. Because now, oddly enough, we have many friends in common, and we have friends who aren't in the wrestling industry. Shout out to George, first one of the night.
Who's growing / shrinking?
We don't know. Depends. If you ask Stu, he's shrinking.
Yeah.
So where does the fandom start for you, even to begin with?
Oh, man. Well, we were talking about this a bit earlier. Like, growing up, like, I was always a fan of martial arts and stuff. I started at, like, 7 years old. But even, like, around the same time I was watching wrestling, I was always hyper, Mortal Kombat, Power Rangers, running around all over the place. So I think the first thing I ever saw with wrestling was Shawn Michaels. My memory could be wrong, because at the same time I remember Golga from The Oddities.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So, yeah, John, whatever his last name was. That's another memory I have. But I think Shawn Michaels was, like, the first one I saw. And just seeing that, I was like, man, like, how, like, what is this, you know? And eventually it was, like, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, The Karate Kid, Bruce Lee. So I did, like, Jeet Kune Do, it's a form of Kung Fu, for, like, the first, like, 11 years of my life. Always wanted to wrestle, but my family was super, like, not against that, but, like, it was completely, like, it's about to burp, sorry.
No, it's okay. You can burp on the show.
It's completely, like, against, like, how, you know, my siblings or my cousins were brought up or anything. So it was just kind of something I put in the back of my head and just focused on the martial arts. And then finally there was an opportunity and jumped on it.
All right, but let's talk about the martial arts here, because that doesn't surprise me at all when you think Shawn Michaels. Okay, he's got the kick, which then leads to Jean-Claude Van Damme, who kicks everybody's head in.
Yep, and does the splits.
On what, Mercedes vans?
Pretty much,
or
right?
trucks?
Still got it.
Can you do that?
No.
Can you do the splits?
Not anymore.
No?
I used to do it on the chairs like he did.
Okay.
Until about maybe 17, 18. And then...
your balls got too big?
No, I just once injuries start, your legs start closing. It sounds freaking dirty, but yeah.
Well, you know who has a really weird world record, or at least used to? Was Rob Van Dam.
Yeah,
used to have
with the weights,
deadlift,
right?
Or like while doing
when
the
he
splits.
didn't claim to be the showstopper, he claimed to be the whole fucking show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I was doing it off the chairs, and obviously growing up, Rob Van Dam was like my biggest idol, which he's so not anymore. It's really weird, but like in my teen years, and we were talking about this before, like the backyard wrestling days and stuff. Like I would just pretend I'm Rob Van Dam. I just point my fingers to my head and shit. I guess because of the martial arts and stuff.
Well, ErDogan has 3 syllables, so
Yeah,
ErDogan.
I guess so, if you can say it that way. Maybe I'll start doing it in shows here. No.
If you do it once for me, I will pop on commentary.
Maybe I will, yeah. I don't know if you're doing commentary, I don't think Drew will be too happy if I start pointing to myself like that.
Well, it's better than me and Nico saying you do every bit of martial art in the world.
Yeah, he invented some martial arts too. Apparently I do jiu-jitsu, which is, I guess, a knockoff of jiu-jitsu. I'm not sure, but and taekwondo, which I have never done a day in my life.
Well,
That's Mike Bailey, not me.
to be fair, he is the practitioner of martial yoga. So
Yes.
made up disciplines.
Yes,
are his thing.
DDP. No, what is it? Martial yoga?
It's
That's
martial
it, yeah,
yoga.
Martial yoga. It changes lives, guys. Changes lives.
That's right. Eventually, you might be able to do the splits again if you continue doing martial yoga.
Maybe, it's I'm gonna buy his DVDs, his full collection soon, because I think we all need it.
Yeah, well, what is it? Stevie Richards has left DDP. He's coming to Nico Marshall.
Is that you see, you just taught me some new things. I didn't know that.
I've got my pulse on the yoga news. All right, so then that's something that's always really interesting is guys who much like who do wrestling or freestyle or
Right.
Greco-Roman
Transition.
that transition into wrestling itself. Guys who do actual martial arts, it must really help when it comes down to the offensive side of things.
I think it really does. And besides that, I also did tricking, which I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's very underground. It's like more underground than breakdancing. It's martial arts tricking. It's like a form of like acrobatics.
Okay.
So it's not like for fighting, but it's like flashy kicks in the air with flips and twists and shit.
So it's not Krav Maga.
No. It's not a real martial art. It's show.
Okay.
It's completely theatrical. I could actually show you some stuff of me online afterwards.
Please.
And I would like flip off walls and stuff. Like I can't really do as much now, but no, legit. And that for sure gave me like the proper like athletics to start. Even when we were first starting, like the rolls and all that, the flip bumps. Like I knew that from the day one. Like it wasn't an issue. But it's weird considering like if I show you some of the videos, I was able to do some like pretty insane shit that like I never do in wrestling. Like I do very limited acrobatics in wrestling just because I don't think I need to. But
well, wrestling's always a thing of less is more.
It's less is more, and it's also like I'm so used to doing those things and landing on my feet that now I have to like not flip as much to land my body on another body, and I want to be a professional and like not
Squash a guy.
kill the guy, right? So yeah.
So then that was actually a question I was going to get here.
Yeah.
When it comes down to not over rotating,
Right.
was that just a flip bump? That like in my mind that must be tough. Like even for the moonsault, a lot of guys like I've seen guys go in their first moonsault practice and either they're going to hit their head or just completely
Overflip and then knock the back of their head. Right?
Exactly, and it never comes down to the perfect.
It's just practice. No, moonsault or just a regular somersault isn't a real issue because it's pretty like. At least for me, it's not a major flip or anything.
Okay.
But like when you start doing twists and stuff, then it starts getting a bit more complex. But even moonsaults, I can count the amount I've done in my career. Not that many. So like it's something that's I find enough people do. So if that's what they base their offense on, that's great. I always felt I did a little bit of everything. So a little bit of like if there's a hard striker, I could do it with them. If it's a technical chain, mat wrestling type thing, I could do it. A bit of aerial, I could do it. That's what I felt that I was better at, just a bit of a mix, of everything.
So then at this point, doing all the martial arts, doing the tricking,
Tricking,
called it?
yep.
I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah, do it, man.
Doing the tricking, where did you find your opportunity to get into wrestling? What was the catalyst?
So in a nutshell, I mean, as soon as I turned 18, it was something I was checking out. I saw the NCW school because, like, if you Google Quebec stuff, like, NCW is one of the first things that pop up, even to this day, so I give them credit for that.
Well, 30 years.
30 years coming up soon, so definitely they're on top of that. But there was always, like, a fear because it's more the family thing. Like, it was so far away from what our culture, like, and our background is used to, so it was just something I kept putting off. And then finally, when I was like 21, 22, which many consider late for wrestling, I was like, you know what, enough's enough. If I don't do it now, like, I'm never going to do it, right? So even though once I started, I saw people starting at like 30, but
you think it's late because no matter how
I
old
think
you
it's
are,
late.
you're always gonna later.
You're right. You're always going to kind of think it's late. And then I actually went with George, one of my friends, and we checked out a CRW show. And it wasn't even anything about a school. We just I wanted to see what Quebec indie wrestling was all about. I knew about IWS because they had a big thing at Scratch Laval, and I lived 2 minutes away from there.
So a IWS show wasn't the first thing you checked out?
I mean, I knew about it, but it wasn't the first thing I checked out live. Like, I
Okay.
would search them on YouTube and stuff. Like, I knew them pretty well from online, but not in person. And then years later, CRW was like the first thing I just came across randomly on Google, and it was back at their well, I don't remember where it was. They had the venue where they only had fans on two sides.
Yeah.
So it was not. It was. They started where they are now, then they went to that other place, then they're back to where they are now, right? So it was in the middle. And one thing that stood out was so many people on the show were coming out with Torture Chamber shirts. Shane Hawk was. I don't know if Leon was. Kevin Bryan was. Drew Onyx obviously was. So I kept seeing that shirt, and I'm like, all right, I guess if like almost half the roster is repping this shirt, it must be a pretty good school. Checked it out. Got in talk with Drew, and he was like super like cool to talk to and easygoing on the phone. That it kind of like boosted my confidence about trying this out. And yeah, we planned out a date for me to come and have like a tryout. And
What was the tryout like?
it was almost nothing but bumps the first day. I said this already on another interview. It was me and Justin Turnbull, and it was his first ever time in a ring and my first ever time in a ring. And he was already there. I got there late by like, when I say late, it was like 3 minutes late. But still, it's your first time. You want to be there on time, right? So I was like tripping out on my whole drive there. I'm like, I can't believe I'm late. There was like traffic or something. You know how Montreal is. And yeah, I get there. He's already in the ring with Drew. And Drew's giving me that stare like this. I'm writing this guy off, right? He's already not even here on time. Got in the ring, and I don't even know I guess we did like a quick warm up, and then it was just like maybe 200, 250 bumps. Start on your ass, like a sit up, bump, and then get up slowly, and then it was almost like full blast bumps.
Kick your feet out and just go.
Yeah, it was one foot at a time, and then kick both feet out, and couldn't move my neck or anything for the next few days. It's pretty tough, but it's something I always joke about with Justin. Like he's a small guy, right, compared to me. I was a little smaller at the time, but I still had like a good 30, 40 pounds on him at the time. And he, for someone who smokes like a lot, this guy has cardio for days, and he just wasn't giving up. So I was like, man, like, I don't know if I'll beat him, but I got to at least match him. So, like, there was this, like, a friendly competition between us who's going to quit first. And none of us really quit. And after the training I had a talk with Drew. He told me about how it's going to be like and stuff. And yeah, I started from there. Funny thing is, like, even a few years earlier, like, you know, there's always, like, the dream to start.
Yeah.
It never turned into reality, but I spoke to, like, Lance Storm's school and shit. And Tyson Dukes
Nice.
and stuff in Ontario, Windsor, Ontario. But, like, that would obviously involve me moving there. So it was a whole life-changing commitment, right? And obviously finding Drew's place after was a lot easier. It's not that far from my house. And it's much more realistic that way. Yeah, so that's how it started.
That's pretty insane. Who's at the school at the time that you got in there?
At Chamber?
Yeah.
You know what? We had so many people when I first got there. We were at the CRW venue.
Okay.
Drew didn't have his own place yet. We were in transition. So for a while, we were at CRW. Dude, like, I think I started at a really good time because Shane was there full-time. Stu was there full-time. We had Danny, Louis Forêt, Condor, these other two guys that were wrestling at the time. Mercer was there. He was maybe 2 or 3 months earlier than me. He hadn't started wrestling yet either, but he was really good in the ring. We had Simon, who was this big muscle guy, Claudie, like a lot of top guys. I'm obviously forgetting. The girls were good too. We had like 4 or 5 good girls. Trying to think on the top of my head. I mean, just a lot of guys, and everyone was like really involved and really like, you know, helping. Like the vets were really helping the rookies. And I've been to a few chamber practices here and there in the last few months. And that's one thing that's unfortunately missing now. I find there's not enough vets to train with the rookies for them to see, like, you know, if you train, this is what you could become, or this is where you can go. Like Shane would talk to us about Chikara and stuff when I was first there because he was there for a while, right? And you know, things like that are motivating you, making you try to, you know, do better. But I mean, it's just the timing, right? Like,
it's logistics, exactly. If you have more guys who are still on that cusp where they have the time, they have the ability to show up, then they can. If they don't anymore,
Exactly.
but those things
and
are
you
always
can't
cyclical.
expect and you can't expect someone to stay forever, right? I mean, people work and whatnot, but definitely for me, I found it was an amazing time to start. We were like at least 20 to 30 people per class. Like
Wow,
Kevin
that's a
was
big
there and he was
class.
still active in the ring. Yeah, it was a really big class. Leon was there. I forgot to mention him. Leon was coming to every practice at the time, so it was really good.
That's insane. So, you always hear the story of how long it takes certain guys training to debuting. Like, what was your transition time? When did you start taking bookings?
5 to 6 months. So I was like the quickest graduate in all of Chamber. Apparently, Drew likes to mention it often, and I have no problem with that. People knowing about that. But yeah, like I think that comes back to like I was already in good shape. I had the martial arts and everything, and he told me straight up. He goes, "Look, people that are good will start in 12 months. Some take a year and a half." So he goes, "Don't have any expectations." At about 4 months in, he told me, "Get your gear made," and I was like, "Whoa, okay." Like if he's telling me that, I guess there's an idea, right? So I did, and then next thing you know, it was like 5.5, 6 months. I debuted basically. It was I think end of May or beginning of June.
Who was it with?
It was 2 matches in one night. It was actually like a taping for a town in Berthierville, Quebec.
Oh, yes, those tapings.
Yes, those tapings.
We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. You know what I'm talking about. So, I think
hands-on tapings. Hands-on.
I think technically the first match was with Boogly, and then second was with Kevin Bryan, and then a handful of days later, I wrestled in Ontario with Kevin Bryan again as a filler, because he was supposed to wrestle Volcano, and he got injured. So I wrestled Kevin for ISW, Interspecies Wrestling. They were doing like a double show at the C4. So that was a crazy like experience, because that crowd is like, they're drunk, and a lot of them are there to heckle you, and it's a tough crowd to start with when you're not used to it.
Well, those ones, the ISW specifically, that was like, I don't even call those wrestling fans. I call those spectacle fans.
Right, possibly.
They're the, what WWE has nowadays and what NXT has nowadays, where a crowd understands themselves,
right,
and will be there to get their own chants over, get their own
gimmicks
over.
A lot of them were just getting their own stuff over.
Exactly, and that's it. And I really think it starts with the Chikara crowds from 2008, 2009, 2010, the ISWs, like all of those. I completely understand. That must have been jarring a little bit.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there were a lot of chants that like had nothing to do with the match. It was just to pop themselves, right, and stuff. But then coming back and going to like a small town in Quebec where like they don't have any entertainment, or they don't have their own Bell Center or whatever, so they're just so thankful that they have live pro wrestling, right? It's a whole difference.
Well, look at the Rivière du Loup show from earlier this year.
Yep.
Thankfully, I was lucky enough to be able to call it, but I wasn't able to be there live, so I was really on the outside of it, and I'm just 100% being able to watch the wrestling and listen to the crowd, because you have to really listen to the crowd to see if you have to push something over on commentary, and they're just so appreciative the entire night.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we were like almost 5 hours away. Like, it was their own town, but I mean, you could tell there wasn't much going on in the form of entertainment. We had, close to, I don't know what the count was, close to 2,000 people at the arena, and just the production, everything, the setup. Hats off to Drew for that. Like, I know that he had their contacts there, that I guess they worked something out to do it, because they had their local guys there that were doing it as well, and they needed more guys and people to come in to put like a real show on. But yeah, Drew set that up, and that was an amazing experience. We got like the hotels and everything. Like, you felt for a brief period you were doing that full time. So it was a cool experience.
But it's the crowd. It's the juxtaposition of these are crowds that I don't want to say they're spoiled, but they're not going there specifically for the wrestling. They're going for the wrestling and the spectacle,
right? As
opposed to a Rivière du Loup show where you're so annexed from where this stuff normally happens that the crowd is like, no, we want to see wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, like it's not the crowd's fault either. Like when there's too much product shoved down their throat, and there's 30 feds in Montreal, like what are they expected to do after? Like they're seeing it so often, right?
But that's why I feel if you just look at NXT, that's why I feel so many gimmicks in NXT are crazy over, and we know damn well that's not going to pop on the main roster. The Vaudevillains,
right?
What is it? The fake Legion of Doom, the Ascension.
Yeah, that didn't work.
Like those guys, They were so over in NXT,
Yeah.
but that's because they're over because the crowd is tired from a 6-hour taping.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll pop for anything. The exceptions to that are Bailey's, but Bailey would have been over on the main roster regardless. You
Right.
know? Another guy that failed a lot, well, I think that was probably because they just didn't give him the right chance, was Adam Rose. Huge gimmick
Yeah.
down there, and it doesn't get over, and that's because oversaturation. So you're right.
Yeah, definitely, man. And so yeah, talking about the chamber, basically, like I said, those first few months, like another thing I just wanted to say real quick, like I started in 5 to 6 months, yeah, but it was because back then they weren't running as often as now. It was 2 days a week.
Yeah.
But Drew would run rookie practices and privates with whoever wanted to. So I would be the one to volunteer always for the rookie practice to help teach, like to help Drew out with like things, bumps and stuff, to help be used as a body for like a private so guys could try moves on. So I was there like much more often than most other guys. So it definitely helped, being taught, quicker and being able to debut sooner. And hats off to Drew, he saw that I wanted it and that this was something I want to do, and he took me under his wing. He told me where to get gear, like he told me, the ins and outs. Like back then, he at one point he brought his carry-on to the school to tell everyone like what to fill it up with when you're going to a school.
That's
like
smart, because you don't think anybody would teach that.
Right? These are like valuable lessons that like you're not used to. And one thing I do want to say about him is like, once you graduate, like technically a teacher, when you graduate, that's it, right? You're done.
Your hands are washed.
Like this guy would follow through, would get us gigs, would get us bookings, and I can't speak for everyone, but I do see it. I even see it with the younger guys now. They're doing really well. But even with me at the time, for the first few months, like he was very responsible in getting me some pretty big exposure, like NSPW, TOW, and stuff, and things that new in my career I technically shouldn't be getting, right?
Well,
so
I'm looking at it as that is your best advertisement out there.
Yeah.
If your guy's got a good head on his shoulders, he's got the talent, and you've trained him well.
Yeah.
Why not slap the Torture Chamber T-shirt logo on him?
For sure, right? I mean, it helps the school too if you're successful, right? It's a win-win.
It makes sense to me.
It does, and it's something I'm definitely thankful for. And even now, like if I need anything, if I never need any advice, I know he's there. So like it's a constant like mentor, coach type thing that when you need, he's there definitely.
But I think that's if you're a good coach, if you're a good trainer. I think that's the kind of relationship you should have with your students afterwards, or your students can have.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of horror stories. Like a couple of guys who've been on the show have said, like, I went to like 3 different schools before I ended up getting properly trained, whether it be with Drew or somewhere else.
Well, that's the thing. Like going back to that, like even when I was at Chamber, like I was there a few months before I debuted, right? I stayed a few months after I started wrestling, but like I knew guys that came from other schools that were wrestling already 4 years at the time. But they're like going through the training because they never felt that they got the training they needed to get, right?
Yeah.
So they still came back to polish up, and that's the good thing about Chamber. Like it's not necessarily just for rookies. Like anyone could go polish up on their things. And when you watch like 3.0 and their tryout in Florida and stuff, like a lot of the stuff you see are stuff we do all the time at Chamber. Like I'm not putting down the tryout. Like I'm sure it was very difficult in its own way and very nerve-wracking.
But the thing is if you've done it before,
and even Matt and Parker I'm sure can testify. They've come to the Chamber a good couple of times. That trainings are pretty similar. So he's definitely like building you in a direction to lead for that, And that's not something we always see. Like that's one thing I wanted to talk about is I find, people will always start their career with usually that in mind. I mean, I don't think you can ask anyone that say, I wouldn't want to wrestle for the WWE. Like, you'll be stupid if you don't want to wrestle for them, right? I mean, schedule aside and all that, like, they're the main guys.
Eventually, your goal can change, but when you're starting to train, I get that.
I don't see why that would never be a goal you had in mind, People's situation changes. Yeah. Some people don't want to be away from their family as much. I get it.
But, like, it's like when you're going to school. Let's say you want to become a teacher. So you go to school, you get your you get your bachelor's degree in education. Your goal is to become a teacher. Well, sometimes halfway through it, you realize that life hits you and you just can't do it. Well, you're trained to be a teacher, but you're a full-time tutor instead.
Right.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah, that was well said. I just feel that like a lot of people, especially in this province, like just because there's so many feds around, that like as soon as they'll graduate or whatever, and it's happened to me too. You just get so like happy with people actually wanting you on their shows, and that like small confidence booster is enough to get you through your like day to day. So you get content with that. And then before you know it, like you're starting to get injured, and you're starting this and that, and then you're like almost burnt out to the point where like what you initially had in mind is not even there anymore, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I do like about Drew's teaching and Chamber, is that they're always like, he's always giving you pointers for a big show, for a full-time contract, not for the smaller stuff. So even if you don't reach that, or if you never attain that, just to have that professional like mentality that you're being trained in that direction is always something I appreciated.
Yeah, well, I like hearing him in the locker room sometimes, just giving the slight critique to
Right.
everybody. And he won't even single a guy out. He'd be like, guys, I've seen this.
Yeah.
Don't do this because you're never going to get to X,
Right,
Y, Z
right.
if you're doing that. Where if we see your underwear, because I love
Oh,
the,
yeah,
if we
yeah.
see your underwear, get the fuck out, and it's, but it's little, and the funny
But
thing
it's
is,
true.
it's tiny little things that in reality are zero effort to
Right.
you, and then makes a huge difference down the line to where if you do end up being able to get that opportunity, well, you don't have egg on your face. You're already prepared.
Exactly. No, well said, for sure, man.
All right. So then, with the training and, Drew helping you out getting the bookings, the dog, we can talk about him.
Yeah.
That's all he's going to do. Occasionally he'll let off a sigh. It's not because you're boring. It's
Tony
'cause-
has a great dog, guys.
It's because life. See, there you go. There's the sigh. Because life is difficult for a greyhound who sleeps 18 hours a day.
So Tony, look at the muscles on that dog. You think you want to maybe,
If I have to get jacked
yeah,
like him,
kind of look like your
Well,
dog.
he's
Dog
bigger.
look
He's
like
bigger than
owners.
George. So
He is.
So
Well,
George
has shrunk. So,
George is shrunk. Yeah. I got to grow. You got to train me. That's what you got to do
Oh
in the
boy.
gym.
Yeah. Come join us then.
I
I'll
will.
take videos of you.
I will.
Saying you grew.
Yeah, there's enough videos of me and George on the internet lately. So like going into that, I've always found you're well articulate and everything of the sort. Once you're starting to fly a little bit more on your own and everything of that, was getting bookings an easy thing for you, or did you kind of feel weird being hat in hand, like book me on your show?
No, I mean, I've never had that issue of like take it however you want, but I never had an issue getting booked. I always had offers even after like, because it's normal. I mean, Drew's not going to get your bookings forever, right?
No.
It's just more of like a transitional period,
Let me help you out.
right? And then you're kind of on your way, right? So even like when I was getting my own bookings, there was never an issue of not having enough bookings. Like I've turned down more than my fair share of bookings in the last couple of years. So no, that was definitely never an issue. A lot of bookers have been very receptive with me, and I always felt like 90% of the time at least I've been pretty fortunate and lucky with bookers liking me and things going my way most of the time. So
That's always a lot of fun.
yeah.
So, now that you are wrestling, and you mentioned RVD was your guy in the backyard
Yeah.
days and your younger days, once you start getting into it, and I love asking these questions, especially with guys who've done martial arts, because there's a really minute mainstream wrestlers that you can look at and be like, oh, I like that style. You've got the Daniel Bryan, who was big with the kicks.
Yeah.
You had, RVD, who was kind of known for it, but not really.
Yeah, I know.
So, and I'm already stretching to try and find guys who were known for that. You hit your Eve Torres, who they said, oh, black belt this, black belt that, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So, do you look to when you're looking at guys, are you looking at guys more in that style, or what you just enjoy watching?
It's more what I enjoy watching. Like, considering before wrestling, my whole life was martial arts, and still is to a certain extent. I never looked at like a Steve Blackman, quote unquote, and be like, this is my guy or whatever. It was never that. Like, I can't name wrestlers like Eddie Guerrero has always been someone like I've loved like so much. Shawn Michaels, Owen
But I think
Hart,
Eddie
Bret.
Guerrero is one of those nice guys, along with Chris Benoit, depending how you feel,
Yeah.
if you can speak about him. or
Yeah.
not. I think those are two guys, regardless of their size, they were able to influence anybody of any size.
I do believe that. Yeah. Chris Jericho is another one. I
Yeah.
know some people don't feel like he's a bit of a an ass maybe in real life, which I don't know. I don't know him, but
But that's the thing is, who gives a fuck what he's
I
like
don't
in real
give a
life?
shit. Exactly.
We're talking about in the
Exactly.
ring. It's and I think I've had this. I've made this argument on the podcast before, specifically for Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Allegedly a child toucher, but great music.
yeah.
You can't take that away. You can't take away the production of art as opposed to the human being. So it's
Right.
the same thing. If Chris Jericho is a piece of shit in real life, I don't care. I care what he does in the ring as long as he doesn't, fuck it up.
And
for
I'm
me.
not saying he is. Just what
no.
people, you hear some people say. But
like,
it's completely irrelevant.
But it's the Chris Benoit situation.
It's
in
the
my
same
mind.
as that. That's a bit harder, I guess,
'cause
just because we're so close to wrestling. As Michael Jackson was never someone I looked up to as much.
For me, there was a little period where I couldn't watch too many of his matches. There were more so the WCW stuff if Woman was around. But outside of that, no, I can still sit back and watch a Chris Benoit match and enjoy the wrestling of it. Yeah. And you got to look at it that way because there's tons of people like. There's stories all over the world where a guy was a teacher for 50 years
and then
lost it one day and then just shot someone. I'm like, are you really going to take away the beautiful messages and lessons he taught kids for 50 years for one stupid, horrible, monstrous mistake? No,
you're absolutely correct.
Don't advertise the human. Advertise his teachings.
You're right. And even at the time, like there were like people stepping forward or ex-wives were stepping forward about their wrestler husbands that were beating them and stuff, or got violent on occasions. That could have easily been Chris Benoit. Like something happened and then it went too far one day and then boom. Yep. And then what do you do? My son's sick. I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. Clearly, his brain wasn't to the extent that it should be. If there was roids involved, whatever the case may be. So. I guess when you look at it that way, it could have easily happened to a number of guys who have went down that road and got physical, Yeah.
There's no forgiving it.
There's definitely none.
But there shouldn't be a whitewash afterwards of the entire career.
The only thing is, no matter what happens, whenever his name is mentioned, that's going to go with it.
The asterisk is going to be
You can never say, Chris Benoit, the former world champ, who didn't kill his wife and kid,
I just love, I don't love, well, let's just say I appreciate the fact what WWE does now is before, they were just erasing him from history. And now they're just like, okay, he's there, but we're not going to advertise him.
Are they?
Yeah. On the WWE network, which was something I was really surprised out, is they stopped. They haven't edited him out. What they'll do is anything that he's on, they'll put an additional disclaimer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Saying
just like additional. This could be very sensitive to certain people,
right?
And of the sort. And I don't know if he is. I don't know if they ever show him and Woman or Nancy Benoit on the screen.
Sure.
Like that one, I can understand. That one, I can really understand. But like WrestleMania 20, here's an event where hundreds, if not thousands, of people worked so goddamn hard to make a great event because WrestleMania 20 was a great pay-per-view.
I still think that's probably the most, if not one of the top 3 best WrestleMania endings of all time,
hands down.
And no one will remember it or know about it for the next generation.
No one's going to be able.
What an ending, man!
Exactly, it's never going to fall on any sorts of lists, especially because it's such a shame because there's another guy who is known for just being such a fantastic human being, Eddie Guerrero, with him. And so I sit there and I go, I think on the network, the ending of WrestleMania 20 is still there.
Okay.
But I think they cut out him hugging his son.
Ooh,
I think they censor a couple of things where they just like they chip out a few instances.
Okay.
Which I can respect because I can really see how even a diehard fan would be like, no.
Yeah.
I can't.
No, I could agree with that, yeah.
I get that.
I guess.
All right, so in pro wrestling and in life, here we are, Mr. Commentator at IW. Can we mention that?
Yeah, for sure, man. Talk about it.
Yeah, we're in the same field.
You like that, huh? You were impressed.
I was very impressed with you, especially with your ring announcing.
Yeah,
Mr. Very Nice Suit.
Oh, always. I could talk a little bit about that. I mean, this happened almost a year ago, maybe. Well, I was part of the main roster at IWS when they first came back for like the first.
Do you remember meeting me back then? The very first IWS show back.
I don't think so.
I was I didn't go to help at all, but I still showed up and tried to get in for free.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'd worked there.
Did we talk?
I worked there for so long.
Yeah.
We actually spoke 2 minutes. I shook your hand,
man, you didn't try to tell
and
me that.
I shook your hand. I said, "Hey, what's up, Eddie?" And you go, "Hey, man," and you were just really nice to me. And the only reason I knew your name, to be honest, because that was me still coming back to wrestling. Was your T-shirt had your name on it?
Oh, okay. So you're like, oh, hey, Eddie. And I'm like, oh, hey, what's up?
I forget who you were wrestling.
It was a 4-way.
Yes, it was a 4-way.
It wasn't the best of endings. I took a dive and like almost killed myself.
Yeah,
it was Craven, XS, and Shane.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And on that was the show where XS got everybody, yelled at the crowd to hold up Shane.
Right. They were the last two in the match.
Yeah, they were the last two in the match.
Yeah.
And I just remember, because the thing is, XS is old school IWS, and he's there, all right, everybody, go, hold him up. And then you had the old IWS fans that were like, that understood, we're going to hold up Shane, and we're all going to eat shit. And then you had the new IWS fans, and then you also had, what was the name? Like Plaza Theater Plaza?
Del Plaza, yeah.
The security, the local security from there were just screaming, no, don't do it.
Oh my
and it was just like, it kind of killed the spot.
Like, this isn't scratch.
Exactly, where if it were the scratch, unison, break,
Right.
medley, where the security there would have just been like, we're not getting involved.
It's just a different time. People like weren't used to it, right?
And I remember laughing so hard, and my buddy wanted to go do it, and the buddy I was with is kind of frail. And so I would have gone to help out because I know right then how to protect myself and how to help and get idiots out of the way. But I just grabbed him and I went, nope, no, you're not going.
And XS is tough. Like if he's landing on you, you'll probably feel it. There's a few of them that are like they found the fountain of youth, Sexy Eddy included. I find.
So Sexy Eddy, yeah.
I would have been dead by now.
Getting the dumped on your head as much as he has.
Yeah.
But then again, there's tons of guys who will do that 1,000 times, and a guy takes 10% of one of those bumps and he's out. He's gonna tap out, or he's been hurt too hard, and it's a real shame because it's you can compare it to like drug use. A guy will drop acid 40 years of his life and be fine. Guy will drop acid once, and his brain.
I
is
feel
gone.
like I'd be the one that does it once, and my brain would be gone.
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
So yeah, IWS. I was part of the main roster until I had a pretty big injury, and I was out for a few months. And I was always on very good relation with Manny, with Nick Patterson. And then there was an opportunity to come back as a color commentator once Scott Parker got back in the ring. So I was with Adam and Nick to a certain extent. Started actually at Metropolis with Rey Mysterio on the show.
Yeah.
So I got to call the 619. Like I was like, dude, I don't deserve to be here as my first time commentating, but it was pretty cool. Commentated for a few shows, and then there was opportunity to do the actual in-ring announcing, which I got very good reviews on.
Were you doing both in that shows?
Yeah, I did both.
So you were pulling a Brian the Guppy.
I was just sweating bullets. Yeah, just running back and forth.
So then what you got to do is there's enough old school fans, carry a handkerchief with you and just say you're sweating profusely.
Yeah.
And you're going to get the old school IWS fans to just go nuts.
See, thanks to Tony, I know about that now. I was too young to appreciate it.
You got to do it. No, Brian the Guppy.
Yeah.
Brian the Guppy, one of his gimmicks was, I'm sweating profusely, and just have a handkerchief.
I sweat all the time, so that would have been perfect for me, yeah. I was just and it was summer.
Oh,
so
God.
You were,
it was balls ass hot that day.
Hot, and I was in a suit, and I was like, wow.
I was just happy to be in a pair of T-shirt and shorts.
Yeah. Mysterio, yeah.
But that's pretty cool, though, being able to call the 619 on your first night commentating.
It was. I mean, I knew I was the color, and I knew Adam was going to take the main call, but I'm still throwing my 619 in there just for myself to mark out on my own. And that was pretty cool, all in all. And the announcing went well. It was always something I wanted to do. I always want to, look back and be like, I did as much as I can in wrestling, not just in ring. I feel like starting off just because my in-ring was to a certain, technical, athletic type that people wouldn't think that my mouth could run.
Yeah.
But I always know that I could. So if you give me a mic, which not many people did, besides IWS, I knew it would work. So even though it was as a ring announcer, it seemed to go well. And we'll see what the future holds for IWS and myself.
Well, I think that carries over regardless, like you said, is as long as you have a mic in your hand, whether it's to actually do a job where you're announcing guys, to get yourself over, or to get over a story. At the end of the day, I think the art form is similar enough between the three that you can totally do it.
So what's going on with your dog right now? He's just walking in circles?
Yeah, right now he's circling, and he's ass down, and there we go.
You were just sitting. You want to tell the world what your dog's name is, or is that private?
No, you can go right ahead. I'm very proud of my dog's name.
Champa.
Oh.
He looked.
Yeah.
So Tony's dog is Tommaso Ciampa.
The Sicilian psychopath.
The Sicilian psychopath. Ciampa.
It was either that, as I mentioned, or Matanza.
Yeah.
Girlfriend knows enough Spanish that she didn't, but she doesn't know enough wrestling to realize that
Ciampa's good enough.
that I named her after the Sicilian psychopath.
That's so funny.
I still win. And like you mentioned off air, Gargano, he's coming soon. Gonna get another one. Yes, please have another Pabst. On that note, we're gonna drink some Pabst and continue relaxing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'll let you finish that sip.
Yeah, I had to just sip that down. Yeah, guys, so that's it. Rowdy Wrestling Podcast. I just want to say, if you want to check me out, I'm wrestling full-time NCW, and I'm part of the IWS, also doing Torture Chamber shows when they do run. So definitely check me out. If you want to follow me on Facebook, it's just Eddy ErDogan. It's not a fan page. It's my actual Facebook. So write me. Same goes for bookers or promoters, Mention what needs to be done, and we'll see if we can find something convenient.
All right, thanks, brother.
Tony, thank you, man.
Thank you for listening to the Rowdy Wrestling Podcast. Download again next week for more awesome pro wrestling talk only on rowdywrestling.net.